When I began dating again at 68, after 6 years alone, after 31 years of marriage and a divorce that was fair and painful in approximately equal measure, I was watching men the way a customs agent watches luggage. Not obviously. I am a precise person, and I am subtle when I choose to be, but I was cataloguing, assessing, running quiet analyses on everything said and not said, every question asked about my life, every comment about real estate, delivered as a compliment and received as something else. I told myself this was wisdom. I had worked as a civil engineer for 35 years. I understood load-bearing structures. I understood from professional habit and long experience which foundations could be trusted under pressure and which ones failed. It seemed entirely reasonable to apply the same analytical framework to men I was considering letting into my life, into a life I had rebuilt carefully, largely alone, over 6 years. What I did not understand, for longer than I'd like to admit, was the difference between paying attention and operating from fear, between discernment, which is a living thing, which responds to actual evidence in front of you, and a verdict delivered before the evidence is fully in. I am 70 years old. I own my house in Sacramento outright. I have a pension and a retirement account, and a carefully constructed life on the other side of a marriage that ended when I was 62. I have real things to protect. That part is true, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. And I have spent 2 years learning that protecting real things and treating every man I meet as a potential threat are not the same project. One is wisdom, the other is loneliness with better branding. I was engaged in the second for quite a while before anyone helped me see it clearly. Owen Barger was the first man I dated seriously after the divorce. He was 69, a retired contractor, pleasant company, the kind of man who fills silence naturally and makes an evening go easily. We met through a mutual friend, had dinner twice, went to a gallery opening, found enough in common to keep talking. I liked him. I also, from approximately the 3rd date, watched him constantly. I catalogued the questions he asked about the house, how long I'd owned it, whether I'd done the kitchen renovation myself, what the neighbourhood had been like 10 years ago. I noted the way he mentioned in passing that his apartment lease was coming up for renewal and he hadn't decided what to do. I registered the comment about how much space I had, delivered as a compliment but landing in my internal record keeping as data. 6 weeks in, Owen suggested we spend weekends at my house rather than going back and forth. More space, he said, more comfortable, just practical. I said I'd think about it. I thought about it for 3 days, not in a casual way, but in the way I approach a professional assessment, systematically, laying out evidence and counter-evidence. Then I ended things, politely, in a phone call that left him sounding genuinely confused. Here is what I understand now that I didn't then. I had already decided about Owen before that conversation happened. The weekend suggestion confirmed a conclusion I'd already reached, but I had reached it before the evidence warranted it, because I wasn't actually reading Owen. I was reading a composite I'd assembled from wariness and pattern and the particular alertness of a woman who had already rebuilt once and had decided, somewhere underneath the careful thinking, that she would not be doing it again. That is not discernment. Discernment is a response to what is actually in front of you. What I was doing was closer to pattern matching, taking fragments of behaviour and fitting them to a case I'd already decided to make, the way you can make almost any piece of evidence support a conclusion you've already reached if you hold it at the right angle. Owen may have been exactly what I feared. He may have been a man navigating genuine housing uncertainty who was, consciously or not, allowing a new relationship to solve a practical problem. That happens. I know it happens. I have watched it happen to women I love. Or he may have been a 69-year-old man who liked me and wanted to spend weekends somewhere comfortable, and said so inelegantly, because men often do. I ended things before I could find out which was true. I am not saying that was necessarily wrong. I am saying, honestly, that I don't know whether it was right. I want to be clear about the other side of this before I go further, because I have been questioning my own vigilance, and I don't want that to read as dismissal of the real risk. My friend Priscilla Mwangi is 67, a woman of warmth and intelligence and considerable generosity, who has been my closest friend in Sacramento for 15 years. 2 years ago, she met a man named Gerald at a community theatre production. He was charming, attentive, funny in a large room way, the kind of man who makes you feel, in his company, like the most interesting person present. Within 4 months, through a sequence of steps that each seemed reasonable viewed individually, Gerald had essentially moved into Priscilla's house. He had stopped paying his own rent. He contributed to groceries, at first, then inconsistently, then hardly at all. When Priscilla raised it, not as an accusation but as a practical conversation, Gerald had explanations. A delayed payment from a client, cash flow issues that were temporary, next month certainly. Each explanation was plausible. Each led to the next. It took Priscilla 14 months to remove Gerald from her home, not because she was naive or careless, she is neither, but because each individual accommodation had felt manageable in the moment, and by the time the whole picture was visible, she was entangled in ways that required a lawyer, a formal process, and an emotional cost that took her the better part of a year to recover from. She did not lose her house, but she lost 14 months, and something harder to name, a specific confidence in her own judgment that she is still 2 years later working to rebuild. I tell you Priscilla's story because I think the truth lives somewhere between hers and mine. The risk is real. There are men, not all men, not most men, but some men, who are navigating genuine financial hardship and who will, consciously or through a kind of motivated not noticing, allow a relationship with a woman who owns her home to quietly solve a housing problem. This is not a paranoid fantasy. It is a documented pattern, and it happens to careful, intelligent, clear-eyed women regularly. The question is not whether to pay attention. The question is what kind of attention actually protects you. Here is what I have come to believe. Priscilla's mistake was not that she watched Gerald insufficiently. Her mistake was that she never had a direct conversation, early, explicit, probably uncomfortable, about what she was and was not willing to provide. She watched and hoped and made accommodations that felt small individually and were not small collectively. The antidote to Gerald is not a more sophisticated surveillance system. It is an honest conversation, earlier than feels comfortable, about what each person has and what each person needs, and what the relationship is and isn't going to be. That conversation would not have been graceful. It might have ended things with Gerald immediately, which would have been the right outcome faster. It might have surfaced an honesty in Gerald, that Priscilla never got to find out was there. Either way, it would have told her something real. Watching tells you something. Talking tells you more. Here is what I have learned at 70 about money and dating in particular. A man's financial situation does not reveal whether he wants you for your house. His financial situation reveals the context. His honesty about that situation is what reveals his character. Those are different things, and the distinction matters more than anything else I've worked out on this subject. A man who is financially comfortable can be completely dishonest about his intentions, about his other relationships, about what he actually wants from a partnership. A man who is financially stretched can be completely honest about his situation, his limitations, what he can offer and what he cannot. The number in the bank account is not the data point. The willingness to be truthful about it is. What I learned to look for, and it took me longer than it should have, was not a particular financial profile. It was honesty about the financial reality, whatever that reality happened to be. Because a man who is evasive about his finances, who allows me to draw incorrect conclusions without correcting them, who changes the subject when money comes up, or becomes vague in a way that has texture and intention behind it, that man is telling me something true. Not about his bank account, about his character. And a man who says plainly, I rent, I have a modest pension, I am not in a position to contribute substantially to a shared household, and I want you to know that from the start, that man is also telling me something true about his character. Something I can actually work with, because it is real and it is offered without prompting, and it costs him something to say it. The transparency is the information, not the number. I understood this in theory for some time before I understood it in practice. Desmond was the one who showed me the difference. My daughter Sylvia is 38, works in organizational psychology, and has had, since approximately age 14, the particular gift of locating the thing I am not examining about myself. She does not do this maliciously. She does it the way a person with good eyes points out something you missed, because she can see it and it seems worth mentioning. She came to visit in March. We had dinner and talked about Desmond Achike, who I had been seeing for 8 months by then. Desmond is 72, a retired high school history teacher with a quiet humour and a quality of attention that I had come to rely on without fully acknowledging I was doing so. He rents a 2-bedroom apartment across town. He has a teacher's pension that is modest and a retirement account that is modest, and he has been, from the first conversation we had about it, entirely and voluntarily straightforward about both. I had been, privately, congratulating myself. Desmond passed the tests. He was transparent about money. He never angled for access to my house, never suggested a practical consolidation that would benefit him, never made me feel like a financial solution being assessed. I found this reassuring, and I was perhaps more pleased with myself about it than the situation warranted. At dinner I said something, I don't remember the exact words, about appreciating how uncomplicated Desmond was. Sylvia set down her fork. She said, "Mum, do you actually like Desmond, or do you like that he passes your tests?" I told her that was an unfair question. She said, "I know, that's why I'm asking it." I thought about it for a week. Not the way I think about a problem I want to solve, the way I had been thinking about everything related to dating, which was with the part of my brain that is most comfortable with analysis and least comfortable with uncertainty. I thought about it in the other way, the slower way, the way that involves sitting with a question instead of working on it. The honest answer, when I found it, was both. I liked Desmond, his company, his dry humour, the specific quality of his attention, the way he listened to me as if what I said actually mattered to him, rather than as if he were waiting for his turn to speak. I liked who I was in his company, which is a thing I had not expected to feel again at 68, and which I had not, I realised, given full credit to. And I also liked that he passed the tests, that I could be with him without the background vigilance running its constant low hum. And I had perhaps, not entirely but meaningfully, allowed the passing of tests to substitute for the deeper question of whether this was someone I wanted to build something real with. The tests had become a proxy for intimacy. As long as I was assessing, I didn't have to risk. As long as the surveillance was running, I didn't have to be fully present. Vigilance had become a replacement for vulnerability. Fear wearing wisdom's clothes, doing wisdom's job badly. I told Desmond what Sylvia said. Not immediately. It took me 3 weeks to decide that honesty was the right move, and another week to find the words that were true without being a confession of every uncharitable thought I'd had in 8 months. We were sitting on my back porch on a Sunday evening, late enough that the light had gone flat and the garden had gone grey, and I told him I had been carrying a wariness into our relationship that he deserved to know about, that I had real things I'd built and real reasons to be careful, and that the carefulness had, at times, tipped into something that wasn't fair to him. He listened without interrupting. He is good at that, genuinely, not performatively good at it, not the kind of listening that is actually waiting. Then he said something I had not expected. He said, "I know, I've been aware of it for a while, and I want to tell you something I should have said sooner." He told me that he understood the dynamics, that he was conscious at his age of the housing asymmetries that existed between people, that he knew men who had allowed financial need to quietly drive relationship decisions, and that he had thought carefully about how to be in a relationship with a woman who owned her home without either of us pretending the asymmetry wasn't real. He said, "I'm not looking for a landlord, I'm looking for a partner. I know the difference, and I need you to know that I know it." Then he said, "And I need you to decide whether you believe me, not based on a test, based on 8 months of knowing me." I sat with that. 8 months. The dinners where he paid his half without discussion and without theatre. The weekend at the coast where he had booked and paid for his own accommodation, without my asking and without making a point of it. The times he had disagreed with me directly instead of accommodating, not combatively, but as someone who had his own views and expected them to be engaged. The conversation about his pension, where he had been precise and entirely unembarrassed. The fact that in 8 months he had never once asked about my finances or my retirement accounts, or what I planned to do with the house eventually. The evidence was there. I had been collecting it the whole time. I had been filing it as surveillance data, when it was actually something simpler and more important. A man, consistently, over time, showing me who he was. The question was never what his financial situation said about his motives. The question was whether he was honest about his life. He had been honest about his life from the first conversation we'd had about it. I had been the one running tests instead of paying attention to what was actually in front of me. I built something real in the years after my divorce. The house, the pension, the retirement account, the life I learned to inhabit fully and without apology on my own. That took 8 years and a kind of sustained intentionality that I am genuinely proud of. It is worth protecting. What I have learned at 70 is that protecting it does not require stealth, does not require preemptive suspicion or a surveillance apparatus, or treating every man I meet as a case to be built against. It requires honesty, mine and his, offered early when it is still uncomfortable, before the accommodations have compounded into something that requires a lawyer to undo. Priscilla needed that conversation with Gerald and never had it. I needed that conversation with Desmond and finally did, 8 months later than I should have, but not too late. The difference between those two outcomes was not better surveillance. It was the willingness to say the true thing out loud and then watch what he did with it. A man who responds to your honesty with his own is showing you something real. A man who responds to your honesty with evasion, or with a flattering deflection, or with a sudden change in temperature, he is also showing you something real. Both are information. Neither requires a test, because neither is a test. It is just two people being honest with each other and seeing what is actually there. I built something worth protecting. I imagine you have too. Protect it by being honest about it, with yourself and with him, not by hiding behind vigilance and calling the hiding wisdom. The right person will not come for what you've built. He will come for you. He will be glad the house is yours and ask for nothing but the same honesty he's already offered. When he does, let yourself notice.